Hello and welcome back to the 20th and final installment in a series of videos about the history of Japanese prints and the collection of Japanese works on paper at the Honolulu Museum of Art. I'm Stephen Salel, the curator of Japanese art. In this video, we will focus upon the visual culture that was associated with the ukiyo-e movement from the mid-16th century until the late 19th century and consider the different styles of art through which that imagery has survived to the present day. Allow me to review what we discussed in our previous videos. The series, organized chronologically, was divided into 4 sections of 5 videos. Each section began with a discussion of a historical topic, followed by monographs of 4 artists. Section 1 focused upon the 17th and early 18th centuries. We discussed the origins of woodblock printmaking, Hishikawa Morinobu and the rise of the ukiyo-e movement, Tori Kiyonobu's popularization of kabuki actor prints, and the development of the genre of bijinga, depictions of beautiful women, by the Kaigetsuro school and by Nishikawa Tsukenobu. In section 2 of the series, we focused upon the late 18th century, the stylistic evolution of printmaking, the bijinga prints of Suzuki Harunobu and Kitagawa Utamaro, and the innovation of semi-realistic portraiture by Katsukawa Shunsho and Toshusai Sharaku. Section 3 dealt with the 19th century. We discussed the way in which the public's interest in domestic travel fueled the development of landscape prints. 2 of the most successful landscape artists were Katsushika Hokusai and Utagawa Hiroshige. The genre of kabuki theater prints was perpetuated by Utagawa Kunisada, and Utagawa Kuniyoshi popularized images of warriors and the supernatural. Section 4 of our series covered the 20th and early 21st century. We discussed the ways in which Japan's rapid modernization affected Japanese woodblock printmakers. Some, such as Onshi Koshiro, promoted the creative print movement, while others, including Kawase Hasui, supported the new prints movement. In the late 20th century, both movements were succeeded by the international Mokuhanga movement. Beyond Mokuhanga, we can see various ways in which our contemporary international visual culture perpetuates the legacy of ukiyo-e. The subject of beautiful women remains popular among contemporary photographers such as Araki Nobuyoshi. And while such photographs are far more realistic and more strongly convey the artist's personality, nevertheless, as contemplations of the female figure, they are connected to the work of such artists as Kaigetsuro Dohan and Kitagawa Utamaro. The emotional intensity of early kabuki actor portraits can likewise be found in the work of Japanese photographers such as Moriyama Daido. While Moriyama's images deal primarily with culturally non-specific themes such as urbanization and the dark corners of a highly industrialized society, the influence of Japanese art historical imagery, specifically that of Japanese prints, deserves consideration as well. In addition to Japanese photography, a medium with a longer, more complex history, that of tattooing, displays the influence of ukiyo-e imagery as well. As discussed in a previous video, in his warrior prints, Utagawa Kuniyoshi popularized images of tattooed bandits featured in the Chinese novel The Water Margin, and in turn, works by him and other ukiyo-e print designers inspired tattoo artists in Japan at least since the turn of the 20th century. However, the use of tattoos throughout Japanese history to designate criminals, and the social stigma that the medium has suffered as a result, prevents many of the most talented tattoo artists within Japan from receiving the recognition they deserve. Accordingly, much like the Mokohanga movement, the industry of Japanese-style tattooing has largely become internationalized. In the United States, such body decoration is enthusiastically accepted as an art form, not only at annual tattoo conventions, but at museums as well. As mentioned in our discussions on hokusai and hiroshige, another medium that has close aesthetic ties with Japanese woodblock printmaking is manga, Japanese comics or graphic novels. Undeniably, foreign artists have had a strong influence upon Japanese comics since the late 19th century. But as a movement that has permeated Japanese society ever since, it has developed a distinct visual sensibility, which draws inspiration, at least in part, from ukiyo-e. A similar visual and thematic influence from Japanese prints can be detected in Japanese cinema, not only in films produced shortly after the Pacific War, but also in recent live-action movies and anime as well. Ultimately, our international visual culture in the early 20th century is a chaotic blend of multicultural art historical influences, but we can find among those roots stories and images drawn from the history of Japanese woodblock printmaking. And in recognizing these connections, we can appreciate the enduring resonance of what we refer to as the floating world.